First they destroy the Mets, then they crush the will of the Yankees. Last place Yankees. That just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Last place Yankees. Hey, man, our man, Grant McAuley, getting us ready for the Bravos. First things first, what do you think of Max Fried? A lot of hits, but still obviously in control last night, G.
Yeah, I thought he was able to kind of work through the first couple of innings and start to kind of settle in. Not as many swings and misses as the night got started, but I thought he kind of started to find things. Fastball command was a little bit spotty. I don't think the curveball was right where he wanted it, but he used all 5 pitches, and he was able to, again, give the Braves the innings that they needed, and the offense certainly answered the call as well. So when you put it all together, a pretty good start for Max Fried, and a good step that he was out there to start the 7th. Even if he didn't complete that inning or even record an out, I thought it was good to see that he's been able to get up and down and work himself into the 7th inning as his pitch count continues to rise.
I'm going to read a stat. Stats are what you make of them. I understand that, Grant. But I just found this to be an intriguing one. I know that you know, but for the benefit of the audience here, from ESPN today. Over the 5 games against the Mets and the Yankees, the Braves outscored the 2 New York teams so far, Mike, by a total of 51-13. The 38-run differential is the best 5-game span differential in the history of the Braves since the Milwaukee Braves in 1957. And that team won that team went on to win the World Series. Grant, these aren't wins. Suddenly we're back to domination.
Yeah, and this is what this Braves offense is, right? I mean, we've seen it at the beginning in June when they absolutely lit the baseball world on fire and went through that incredible month and went 21-4. They rolled that right into the All-Star break, and then it kind of slowed down in terms of the wins. But the offense really hasn't let off the throttle that much. And I was going back and looking through August. I mean, they've already scored 111 runs this month, which is an average of nearly 8 runs per game. And again, I understand they had a 21-run game against the Mets. You can put that to the side. This is still an offense that's putting up 6 to 7 runs per night. That's going to give you a chance to win a lot of games. And it's interesting you brought up 1957 with that stat. I just got done kind of scrolling through and seeing a picture of Hank Aaron that said the last time a Braves player led the majors in home runs and runs batted in, it was Hank Aaron in 1957. Nice. Matt Olson is currently doing that, and to the point that you made just a moment ago, 1957 was a pretty good year.
Yes, it was for the Bravos, man. Another great start for Nicky Lopez. What a story, Grant. I know we touched on it yesterday. They're going to bring up Vaughn Grissom. Is it going to be a platoon? Snicker's going to go with a hot hand, so Nicky gets to play tonight against the Yankees, looks like.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for riding the hot hand right now. And with Nicky swinging from the left side as well, he might get a good amount of starts against right-handers, though I wouldn't rule out Vaughn Grissom, depending on matchup, also getting some opportunities. I don't think you necessarily bring him up here just to sit him around, but I also look at, you don't bring Nicky Lopez over to be a guy to step up and then not use him at all either. So it probably will be a bit of a timeshare. I don't think it'll be a strict platoon, but I talked a little bit to Vaughn Grissom earlier as he arrived at the ballpark, and he's just kind of ready for this opportunity, whatever it takes to help out the team, whether that means coming off the bench, playing second, playing short, pinch running, whatever it is. He's ready to do that. And, Brian Snitker also indicated that, they want to find ways to mix Vaughn in, but he has gotten a full, season's worth of minor league at bats. So they don't feel like, unlike if they'd had him up just kind of hanging out in the background all year long, it would have stunted his development. But he really got the opportunity to hit and to hit very well at the AAA level. So I do feel like he's a guy that could help this club out. But Nicky Lopez has also shown in a very short amount of time that he can also be a difference maker, and he's an incredible fielder. So I do think that there are some, pros and not so many cons, but some pros for both players, and they can mix and match and figure this thing out, and hopefully it's the minimum amount of time for Ozzie Albies, though we don't know what the timeline is as of yet.
Grant McCauley joining us, Braves and Yankees tonight. It's Luis Severino and Bryce Elder. So which Bryce Elder, Grant, clue me and help me out here. I'm a fan. You're looking at me saying, John, the Bryce Elder that you're going to see tonight and moving forward is which one?
Well, I think he's a guy that is having to do what all pitchers have to do over the course of the season sometimes, is find answers when things aren't going well. It's always, when things are kind of rolling the way they were from early, I feel like that had to be a groove. And by early, I mean basically the entire first half. And really it was a continuation of what he did in the second half of last year. But, for Bryce, I feel like the things that have impressed me the most about him is he's somebody that just continues to grind it out. He's recognizing some things aren't working. But he said after that last start in Pittsburgh, it's not that I'm throwing the ball, poorly. I feel like I'm just kind of a pitch away. And if I can execute a little bit better I'm going to be able to get out of some of these innings. And so with that in mind and with that, success under his belt from earlier this season, I do feel like he's somebody that can continue to contribute quality starts to the Braves down the stretch. This is a lineup that does have some teeth. Maybe some of these guys aren't having the usual big years, but there are some threats for this Yankees lineup, so it's going to be a good test for him. But I do think he's up to the task of being able to kind of return to form and at least give the Braves the quality starts. That's 6 innings and 3 earned runs or less by definition. You give Atlanta and this offense that kind of start night after night, you are going to pile up some wins.
It is fun watching the Yankees struggle. It was fun watching that guy Ian Hamilton sweating gravy like Ted Stryker in Airplane, Grant, last night. I mean, just real quick, that's the moving ahead. We're used to this weather. Certainly the Braves are. But we should get San Francisco coming in. Is that going to be a factor unless we get some cool down in the next few days?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is just kind of a club that, regardless of the conditions or whatever they're facing, they're going to be able to do their thing. But it was a very hot night. And when you look down from up above, they handed out fans, I guess, again, the little paper fans. It was just constant motion all across the outfield, the upper deck, the lower area, the high roller area right behind home plate. It was pretty hot, long story short. So, hopefully it will cool off a little bit just for all of us. But, I wouldn't expect it here in the South to get too cool too soon because we haven't really approached that October, November yet.
Obstead, can we go back in the Delta Club? I'm getting the vapors.
Yeah, it was. But, it's good, though. I mean, because you mentioned earlier, Mike, San Francisco coming in.
Right.
Those weenies, they're not used to anything above 75. So,
right.
I mean, let's put them in the heat and see how they melt and wilt. But everybody melts and wilts against this lineup, too. Michael Harris moving into the second slot here temporarily. Does that stick until Ozzie comes back? And what kind of impact do you think that has on the lineup and on Michael himself?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, there's really no better candidate to hit second if Ozzie Albies is not available than Michael Harris the second. And I still think long-term, over the course of his career, he's going to find himself in that spot. And, early on, he had to kind of battle through things to get himself rolling. But the last 2 months, I mean, I think he's shown you the value that he can provide. He's been one of the leading hitters in Major League Baseball since early June. Obviously, we like what he does on the base paths if you're watching him from the Braves perspective, and teaming him up with Ronald Acuna Jr., whether that's, Harris was hitting ninth and Acuna first and vice versa with 1 and 2 now. I still think this is a dynamic way to start a game. It puts a lot of pressure on pitchers because both guys can find their way on base. And then you got Austin Riley doing what he's been doing. And obviously we know Matt Olson has been leaving the yard with some regularity and driving in a lot of runs. So I don't really see a lot of let up at the top of this order, even without a hitter as good and as important as Ozzie Albies was, because you have a Michael Harris you can turn to.
I know we talked a lot about Ozuna. I'm Ozuna from the Braves, batting .264 for the month. So is his swoon out of the way? I mean, just looking ahead for the rest of the dog days of summer. So was that all we're going to get? I mean, he's back on track because he's having a hell of a year. And when he's on, this team, to your point, the entire lineup is complete.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a 12-game hitting streak now for Ozuna, and he's also been drawing his walks. He's cut down on the strikeouts. He's been finding his way on base. It may not be a home run a night or anything like that, but you keep finding your way on. I mean, he kind of sparked that rally for the Braves last night as they started to really pull away in that game with that double down the line. Eddie Rosario looks like he's starting to kind of round into form. And a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, I posted this last night or I tweeted it, wasn't it not long ago that it was ice cold Ozuna and ice cold Eddie Rosario, and maybe you need to go get a left fielder or a DH, and all of a sudden they have returned to form. And this is a dangerous lineup, and those guys are certainly capable of contributing to it. And they've shown in the past and over the course of this season, there are a few big hits in those bats. So hopefully they have worked their way through the doldrums and found themselves hot at the right time for the Braves, because when they're going, you consider that top 4. Then you got Orlando Arcia and whoever you might throw in at the bottom of the order. And, of course, the catching duo that has a ton of power. This is an incredible lineup.
Grant McCauley is our Braves insider, our baseball expert, host of From the Diamond. And, of course, you can follow him on the Twitter, Grant McCauley, 1C, MCAULEY. And Grant is on with John Fricke and Mike Bell on 92.9 The Game on Dukes and Bell. Grant, I am watching I'm scoreboard watching in the middle of August, and I'm doing it in a different way than I ever have before as an Atlanta Braves fan. I'm not watching the NL East. I'm watching the Baltimore Orioles. I'm watching the LA Dodgers. I'm watching the Texas Rangers. I'm watching the teams immediately behind them in the overall home field standings here, and it is kind of a different way to watch the game.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of these kind of things over the course of the last 3 decades of Braves baseball, where it's possible for Atlanta to certainly have the record in the National League, if not all of baseball. But it's kind of been a minute since the Braves have been in this position, to your point, in the month of August in that kind of driver's seat. And as we've talked about, throughout this call and throughout the course of the summer and all season long, really, with this Braves offense, you just feel like they're never out of a game. I mean, they're even at a 500 clip coming out of the All-Star break for, 3-4 weeks. You still never felt like, well, this is a club that was just really in danger of falling off because they're going to get the pitching right, and I think they have. I think the bullpen has done a nice job of at least holding serve as much as possible despite the struggles of the rotation. But, yeah, I think this offense is kind of what separates the Braves from some of those other teams, although you do have a powerful Dodgers club, and the Orioles have been a great story all year long, and I don't think you can take anything away from what the Rangers are doing. So with about a quarter of the season left, I mean, those are four horses that are going to be really, really galloping toward that finish line, trying to pick up as many wins as possible.
Grant, I know we've asked you this before, but just a couple guys hit us up on the text line, ask Grant about Soroka, just to reinforce the timeline for Soroka, because obviously they got things right with Fried. He came back, looks great, but everybody's injury is unique. So when do you think we see Wright starting the game?
Yeah, for Wright, I think that it's still going to be a mid-September-ish, whether that's between the 7th and the 14th or whether it may be, the 14th or a little bit later. It's the good thing is he is now facing live hitters, and that was the next step in his progression. He's gone down to Florida to do that because, and Brian Snitker kind of joked about this, with things being the way they are, with this 11-game road trip and with things as hot as it's been here, we just want him to go down there and be able to get work and us not have to drag guys out there to hit at 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. So, I think everything's trending in the right direction for him. But when he gets to the minors, 4 starts probably, like Max Fried had, in order to build that pitch count and get back up here. Snit did say yesterday, no plans as of right now to bring him back as a reliever. So they're going to be looking to have Kyle Wright ready to help out this club in rotation, moving down that stretch in September, that final couple of weeks. And if he's throwing the ball well, he was the only guy that picked up a win last October in the Braves NLDS against the Phillies.
Great stuff as always, Grant McCauley, and hopefully we will continue this complete humiliation of the Yankees